Good evening, UK Crime Book Club. Oh, absolutely thrilled to have Helen Blenkinsop, who acts as AA Abbott, with us. I've been saying to Kaz this week, you're just delightful and charming. I couldn't wait to actually have a chat with you. So do you want to introduce yourself properly?
Good evening. Thank you. Good evening, UK Crime Book Club. I'm Helen. I write as AA Abbott. So that's a gender neutral and alphabetically friendly pen name. And I've written and self-published 8 thrillers, of which the latest is my darkest yet, and it's a psychological thriller called Bright Lies. And I'm going to put it in front of the camera now so that everyone can.
It's a gorgeous cover. It really stands out.
I hope the cover is familiar to UK CBC members, because UK CBC members pretty much chose that cover.
They did in your poll.
Answer. But I put a number of covers up, and this one, can't get it in front of the camera. What am I doing?
Never make a weather girl.
This one was pretty much the winner. It's got bigger text and it's got an extra butterfly or moth, I'm not sure which myself, extra flying creature, but this is the cover that won. It was the choice of UK CBC.
We have excellent taste.
You do. Lots of people like that cover. Oh, I'm going to have to show it to everybody again. Bright Lies. Like a moth to a flame. There
you go, they have to be moths.
Yes, moths crop up a few times in the book. They're a bit of a motif, really. So there's a scene quite early in the book.
The chrysalis.
Yeah. And they're painting. The main character is called Emily, and she begins as a 12-year-old, an art-mad 12-year-old who's really keen on painting. Her mother marries a new man called David, who is an artist, and David teaches Emily to be a better painter. So she really likes David. He's her mentor. And the first thing she paints with him is a chrysalis. Moths also crop up when she has her tea leaves read. And there's a butterfly.
Oh, of course, with Jade.
Yes, when she sees her friend's new stepmother. And it's interesting that you see 2 different step relationships in the book, because you've got Jade, the rather young and trendy stepmother of one of Emily's best friends. And Jade is desperately trying to be nice to Alicia, Emily's friend, and get down with the kids and do everything with her. And Alicia is just not interested at all. Whereas Emily's relationship with David is much better. You would think it's a closer relationship. Unfortunately, David is not as nice a person as he seems, and he wants the relationship to be closer than it really ought to be.
I'm glad you said who Jade was then, because I'm forgetting that we might have people who've not read it yet. So it's me just saying character names, and actually we need to know who they are. Sorry.
I'm so grateful to you for reading the book, though.
I love what I've read so far. I know I've not finished it yet, but by midnight tonight it will be done. It's really good. It's really grabbed me. It's really pacey. So it's, you keep wanting to know what's coming next. And we were talking about this a bit before we came on air, and we were saying how much we could say without giving anything away. But this bit, obviously, the grooming situation is so well written, and it just makes you think about how that situation could come about. You can see it being drip fed, you can see what he's doing, and Emily's got no clue.
And nor has her mother. Her mother completely and utterly trusts her new husband. And to be fair, her mother, Rachel, has a friend who watches crime programs, and very early on in the relationship that Rachel has with David, her friend says, well, shouldn't you be a bit more concerned about your new man? Shouldn't you find out a bit more about him? You know what? You can actually go to the police and they will tell you if you should be concerned about domestic violence or child abuse or anything like that, because you can do this under Claire's law. You can ask the police if you should be concerned about violence. Under Sarah's law, you can ask if you should be concerned about abuse. And Rachel does this. And because David is a very clever predator, he's totally below the police radar at this point. They don't have anything on him, and they tell Rachel that she doesn't have to worry. So she doesn't worry.
But all that really means is that he's not been caught out yet.
Exactly right. And the hope is obviously that he will be caught, because, as I said, he is not a good person. He is toxic for Emily. She thinks he's the best thing since sliced bread, but he's not.
And how well you've written that, because he's very likeable, and the undercurrent isn't, unless you were looking for it, it wouldn't be obvious straight away. And I think that's what helps it just creep in. It just literally creep, and all of a sudden you have this moment of, oh, that's what he's doing.
Yes, he's fascinated by Emily. So David plays a long game. He is prepared to wait. He is prepared to be careful and subtle. And what he gradually does, and he's quite clever about this, it is make her his alone. He isolates her from the people who would help her. And eventually she does try to break free. It's not something that's necessarily very easy for her to do, but she eventually realizes what he is and that she has to get away.
Yeah.
And then there isn't anyone she can turn to. She has to do it for herself. Because which
is the scariest thing when she's so young as well.
It is very, very scary. And I have to say that I got quite emotional when I was writing it, because I felt really, really sorry for Emily, and really sorry as well for Jack, who's another character in the book. Jack is actually a good guy, but he's not perfect. He does have anger issues, and he knows that he's got anger issues, and he does his absolute best to deal with them, but sometimes they just bubble to the surface. And
and sometimes you can't help but, I know we're not promoting vigilantism, but you can't help but be quite proud of him for the things that he stands up for. Again, I won't give anything away, but he is a bit flaky in some ways, but actually his heart and his guts are in the right place.
Yeah, this is it. He will always protect women if he can. One of the reviewers said Jack is a true gentleman, and I think that's a great description of him. If he sees a woman in trouble, he will step in, no matter the cost to himself, and sometimes he does pay a very high price for doing that. And I know you haven't read all of the book yet, Samantha.
Not yet, no.
When you read a bit more, you will find out exactly what has happened in Jack's past to make him that way, because he hasn't had an easy life. He comes from a home that was completely broken by his father's domestic violence, and as a result of that, he and his sister have ended up living with relatives who don't really support Jack as they could.
Yeah, they really wanted Katie.
They wanted his sister. They always wanted a girl. And they treat him pretty much as a spare part. He's kind of useful to them because he's doing A-levels at the start of the book, so they can boast about that. And he's also got a really good singing voice. This is something else that appears in the book as a bit of a motif. It's the fact that Jack can sing Elvis songs. His uncle, who he is forced to live with, his uncle who's given him a home, is an Elvis Presley fan. And Jack's got a fantastic baritone voice. So he ends up having to learn lots of Elvis Presley songs so that he can sing them to his uncle's Elvis Appreciation Society. And being able to sing Elvis songs actually helps Jack in other ways later in the book. He is able to monetize this.
I'm glad to hear it, because he's done enough free concerts.
Yes, there's quite a nice chapter near the beginning of the book where Jack's aunt, with his uncle away, has got her friends round and they're all drinking karaoke. So he stumbles upon a group of really drunk ladies, and they make an Elvis song to them, which he really doesn't want to do. He hates Elvis, but he kind of sees singing Elvis as a necessary evil in his life. And I apologise if I'm offending Elvis Presley fans by saying this. Personally, I think Elvis sang very well indeed. Just saying.
We've got quite a few messages and questions already. So Caroline Maston says hello to us, and Martin Tracy says hello, and Dawn Patricia Bolton, who writes as Tony Bolton, Valerie Keogh, who is Valerie Dickinson, they all send hello messages for us. So that's a nice start to all the messages. Kaz wants to jump right in with, you have books that are dyslexia friendly. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Of course. And that's absolutely right. All of my books are printed not just in this sort of standard paperback format with its spine, but I also have a dyslexia friendly format, which is much thicker because it's got more pages. And that's basically formatted in accordance with British Dyslexia Association guidelines. So you've got a sans serif font. It's large. There's a lot of white space. You can clearly see where the paragraph starts and ends. And it is super easy to read. And the reason that I've formatted for dyslexics is because several members of my family are dyslexic. My grandfather was, and I do think there's a genetic component to it. So although I don't have it, every generation of our family has got dyslexia in it. And I do remember my father saying that my grandfather would never ever pick up a book for pleasure, which I think is a really sad thing. Yeah. If he was alive today, he could read my books, and I'm sure he'd like them.
I'm sure he would. What a lovely thing to do. What a lovely reason for it as well. We do like the fact that our authors are interested in large print and dyslexia friendly and braille, and translating to other languages as well. That's always, there's so many ways, and audio, of course, so many ways to be accessible. So it's lovely to hear a dyslexia friendly adult book.
Yes, there aren't that many around, but Google them and mine should hopefully come up. You mentioned audio, and at the moment I don't have anything in an audio format. I'm planning to have a go at recording my own audio, in spite of the fact that people are telling me not to do it. But I think...
Why are people telling you not to do it?
I think because my characters have accents and I can't necessarily do the accents. So I can just about do a bit of Birmingham, and I'm going to have to train myself to do the Bristol accent. It's mad because I've lived in both Bristol and Birmingham for quite significant periods of time, but I never managed to lose the accent of my youth. I can, however, speak properly if I try. I come from a town called Luton, which is near to London, and I think you can tell. I'd really like you not to be able to tell, but I think you can tell. And Luton's quite a strange place because nothing much happens there at all. It's the kind of place that people come and go through a lot, or at least they did.
I was going to say, it's an airport. I'm sure I've heard of Luton Airport.
Yeah, it is famous for its airport. In fact, as a student, I even did a little holiday job at the airport once. I was making tea at the airport and cleaning the admin block. And that was quite a fun thing to do. I used to do all kinds of jobs as a student, actually. And as an adult, I've done all kinds of jobs as well. mainly accountancy jobs, because what I tend to do is take an accountancy contract for a few months, earn a bit of money, then stop and write a book, and then go back and do another accountancy contract. As a young person as well, I had to earn money, so I worked at Luton Airport. I worked in a car factory in Luton because they used to make Vauxhall cars in Luton, and if you've got a really old Vauxhall and the locks are a bit dodgy, well, that's probably my fault. Sorry about that.
That was you, yep.
I'm afraid so. Shops, I worked behind bars. I've done a bit of electrical rewiring. I've served Black Forest Gatto. I've done all kinds of things, me. And I keep a spreadsheet of jobs in which I grade all of my jobs, and I mark them on several criteria, like whether the boss was nice, whether the people were friendly, whether I had responsibility. So it's the kind of things that tell me whether I like a job, and then I've got a sort routine on the spreadsheet that sorts them from the top one to the least good one.
Oh, can I ask what's top and bottom at the moment?
The top company is a company called Credit Safe in Cardiff. I did a job there once, and they just had the coolest office ever. You know, they've got table football, they've got Spotify on the whole time, and the rule was that everybody could choose their playlist for an hour. So you had an hour's playlist, but then somebody else could put on theirs. And if you didn't like it, you could put on headphones. Every Friday lunchtime, we'd go off and have pizza and wine overlooking Cardiff Bay. That was just one of the best contracts ever. I won't tell you which companies.
I was just going to say, don't tell me the bottom one. I don't know why I would ask that. What a stupid thing to ask you. One of my favourite ever jobs, I used to, you know, the little cheese selections you get at Christmas in kind of Tesco.
Oh yeah, they're good.
Wrap the cheese and pack the trays. That was so much fun.
And would you eat cheese again after that?
Oh God, yeah.
So
could never put me off cheese. Yeah, I've got cheese and crackers for later. But we should point out there are other superstores that have their own Christmas selections available. But I used to pack the Tesco ones, and I loved it. We would stand chatting all day, singing to the radio. Didn't work there for long. I didn't live there for long, so I moved with my husband for a few weeks. He was in the army at the time. And we just lived there for 7 weeks, and I got a temp job in this factory, and I loved it.
Oh, cool.
Easiest money I ever made. Anyway, we'll go back to the feed. Valerie Keogh wants to know what's next for you. So what are you working on at the moment, and what's coming up for you?
I've been writing some Christmas short stories. That's just a bit of fun to keep my hand in. I'm not sure what I'll do next. I've got an idea for a psychological thriller, so I might write another one. In the past, the books that I wrote were a bit lighter, so before Bright Lies...
Yeah, you did warn me, and you weren't wrong.
Yeah, it is quite dark, whereas, you know, The Bride's Trail and the other trail books that I wrote are lighter mystery thrillers, mystery crime, suspense.
Affectionately known as the Vodka Trail.
Sorry? Oh yeah,
affectionately the Vodka Trail.
Oh, here we are. Vodka Wars. They're all about a young woman who ends up running a vodka business. And she's quite an interesting character because there are 5 books and each of them is a standalone, but she's in all of them and she changes quite a lot during the course of the series. So in the first book, The Bride's Trail, this lady who's called Kat is a bit of a party girl, and she lives in a really expensive flat in London that she can't afford. So she illegally sublets a room, and her flatmate can't really afford it either. And they just go to as many parties as they can, and they borrow to the max on their credit cards, and they go out and have a good time. But ultimately, Kat can't afford it, and she marries illegal immigrants to make a bit of extra money, and she moonlights in a strictly illegal casino, the kind of illegal casino run by a gangster in an old warehouse, where everybody smokes, drinks, and gets up to all kinds of stuff that they shouldn't be doing, in addition to gambling. And unfortunately, she falls out big time with this gangster and ends up having to run away. And that's why it's called the Bride's Trail, because she is a bride, albeit a fake bride, and she has to leg it. And at that point, her friends are trying to find her and save her from the gangster. And most readers would look at it and they'd think, well, you know, she's made some bad decisions. Serves her right, really. Nobody's particularly sympathetic to Kat in the Bride's Trail, but during the course of the whole Trail series, when she gets a bit of purpose and she starts trying to make a living for herself rather than sponging off other people, readers do warm to her, and she's everybody's best friend by the time you get to the end. So it was wrapped up quite nicely last year with the final Trail, the last in the series.
This is where I have to ask about real life experiences. So are there any people that you've met that have inspired characters, or have you ever read a newspaper story and that's where the ideas come from?
Quite often, but there's no character who would map one-to-one to somebody in real life. Every character is probably an amalgam of people that I've met. In the Trail series, there's a character who's a Birmingham businessman called Marty, and working in Birmingham, I've met people like Marty, but I haven't met him. And he's a self-made man, and he basically wants his own way. He will listen to other people because he's in business to make a profit, and if somebody can help him, he'll listen to them. But basically, he wants to do things his own way, and he's quite patronising. He's got a good heart, but he does patronise women. He calls Kat Bab, which is a kind of term of endearment often used in Birmingham, you probably know. And he calls his wife Bab. His wife does not mind, but Kat minds a great deal. She does not wish to be patronised by Marty. However, during the course of the series, despite their love-hate relationship, they have to work together. And at one point, she actually saves his business while he saves her life. I don't think that's much of a spoiler away. It's a big series. There's a lot going on in it. But it is very different from Bright Lies because the Trail series is lighter and it's got a huge cast of characters and you get to follow all of them through 5 books. So you see them all change over quite a long period of time. Whereas Bright Lies is more about Emily and to an extent Jack and David. So you get to see them. You get a very intense view of what their lives are like and what they're all about. But it focuses far less on the bit players in the story. I think. Sorry,
go on.
I was just going to say, with a series of books, you've got an opportunity to focus on people who may be at the periphery of one story, but bring them more into the spotlight in another one. So you do get to meet more people in the Trail series.
Kaz wants to know, apart from using the Crime Book Club as a cover choice, do you use social media for other advice?
More on the cover than anything else, but I've made some good contacts through social media. So it's definitely been helpful to me in finding, for example, beta readers, finding people who advise on certain aspects of the book. The Bride's Trail is a bit of a case in point, really, because I wanted to do something with it involving Birmingham. And I was just kind of stuck as to how I could bring some kind of wow factor into the book. And I tweeted about it to Twitter's Brum Hour. I don't live in Birmingham anymore, but I really like Birmingham and I kind of like to stay connected by going on their Sunday night Twitter hour. And I said to Brum Hour, I want to set a book in Birmingham. Can you think of a really interesting location? And some people suggested the canals, and others suggested the Anchor tunnels, which are an extensive tunnel network, fairly secret, underneath Birmingham city centre and the lovely old jewellery quarter, which is next to the city centre. So I ended up finding out a lot about the Anchor tunnels and setting part of the Bride's Trail in them. There's some quite dramatic stuff that happens.
So London, Bristol, Birmingham, North Somerset. So have you lived in all of those places that you featured?
Pretty much. I have to confess I haven't lived in North Somerset, but it's next to Bristol, so I've visited it a lot. So I do know North Somerset and Bath quite well, because they're just places where, if you're in the Bristol area, you'll probably go to see your friends sometimes, or to take your family if they come down to the area and you want to do a bit of sightseeing. Bath is always good for a day out. I've lived in Bristol and Birmingham, and I've lived very close to London and worked in central London several times. And I tend to write about areas that I know. The Bride's Trail started off in Fitzrovia, which is quite a nice area north of Soho, where I worked for 8 months at the beginning of the decade, at the beginning of the last decade, I should say. And that was interesting.
Are there any places that you'd like to live while you write something set there? Have you got dream locations to visit?
Well, I'm open to ideas. If anybody's offering me a little country cottage or a little pad to write in, and a new and interesting place, I'm certainly open to it.
Do you prefer hot or cold places?
That's a really good question. I prefer warm to cold, actually. I'm really pleased that we're having quite a mild winter at the moment. Snow would be nice on Christmas Day, but just so that you can look out of the window at it. Definitely not.
It's gone, ready for people going back to work. Would have disappeared by then. I'm not good in the heat. I prefer the cold.
Where are you based?
Manchester.
Do you think
it's always cold?
Yeah. Birmingham's a lot colder than Bristol as well. That's something that I've noticed. And dusk falls at a different time. So I'm in Bristol at the moment, but I was speaking to my friend in Birmingham recently when I was on my daily walk, my daily lockdown walk. And it was still really, really light in Bristol, but dusk had fallen already in Birmingham. And you wouldn't think there would be that much difference, because it's just 85 miles away, but it's just that little bit further north. So goodness knows when dusk falls in Manchester, because you're even more north of Birmingham.
I think possibly it was about 4:15 today when it started to get dark. I'm just trying to think, because it has changed drastically in the last week, so I'm not sure. We tend to come in at night and just close the curtains and put the lights on, because there's no point, even when you get in from school, you can't see anything.
You can feel it closing in, can't you? You can feel the night closing in during the winter.
Definitely.
And don't you find now it's a bit spooky, because it's so quiet? Where we are, we're in tier 3, so we're not really supposed to go out much unless it's for our daily exercise. And because dusk falls so early, that daily exercise quite often takes place at twilight, I find. And walking through places near to pubs, for instance, that normally would be buzzing with people, I suddenly looked over my shoulder and thought, I'm the only person here, and there could be a murderer lurking in that shadow. I'd better hurry up. And I don't know whether everybody feels like that, or just people who write crime fiction.
I would have said everybody feels like that, but actually, I don't know, maybe it is the writer brain. I'm not sure. I know I certainly worry about it, so interesting. We'll have to do a poll on that. We have got so many questions. I'm sat here chatting away and asking my own, but actually there's loads. So sorry, everyone. I've been hogging Helen. Jason Kelly wants to know why you use the initials AA. You did explain this a little bit early on, but AA Abbott.
It is just purely to be at the start of the alphabet. My real name's Helen Blenkinsop, and I discovered after I'd married Mr. Blenkinsop that people just couldn't spell Blenkinsop. And therefore I decided that I'd have an author name that really worked hard. So it would be at the start of the alphabet. It would be easy to spell. It would be gender neutral. It would be possibly a bit mysterious because I've got no idea what the AA stands for at all. I just made it up. All the A's.
That was going to be my next question. Does the AA have a meaning? But no. Well, I suppose not. If you're going to be gender neutral, it might be difficult to pick. Well, probably not. But yeah, it might be difficult to pick two names, two A's.
Yeah, it can mean anything you like. And I think it was a good call going for something at the start of the alphabet, though, because in one of the other Facebook groups that I belong to, they recently ran a survey to find out how people ordered their bookshelves. And a lot of people do order their bookshelves alphabetically. So
my son's alphabetized mine. I am not an alphabetical person. But yeah, my son keeps coming and just kind of moving things. Not this one. This one is not allowed to touch, but the ones in the living room, he comes and organises. He doesn't care for the mess.
Oh, good for him. Send him to me. Because my bookshelves are not organised in any particular way whatsoever. It's more a case of, oh my God, where will a book fit?
Yes. And sometimes they go like these ones. I've got Pat Adams Wright and Stuart Gibbon and Stephen Wade and C.L. Taylor, and they won't fit stood up, so they lay down.
I do that too.
Anywhere they'll go without damaging the book. Leslie Lloyd says hello. Hi, Leslie. Jason wants to know, do you have a daily writing routine?
The daily writing routine varies. I'm quite distractible. I quite often slip into the UK Crime Book Club to have a look. It's a bad. But when I really settle to it, my daily writing routine is to get up, have some breakfast, and then just immediately start bashing at the keyboard. And I do type. I type everything. I don't write stuff longhand. I know some writers swear by it, but I found that all that happened was that I wrote the same stuff, but more slowly. So it was better just to type. I'm not a touch typist. I tried to teach myself and kind of didn't really have the patience, but I am quite a fast typist. I'm not all that accurate, so I have to bash it out quickly and then go back afterwards and get rid of all the typos. My spelling is absolutely brilliant, but my typing is absolutely terrible. So if I send you a note and I haven't spelt things properly, believe me, I can spell, really. I can't type for toffee.
My autocorrect on my phone changes so many correct words to the wrong spelling that I often use. Did you know that the starts with an R and not a T?
Yeah, I bet you've got the same phone as me. And it's really annoying, isn't it? Because I don't know whether your phone is like this, but with my phone, I can post in Facebook, but I can't edit. And sometimes if I'm a bit bleary-eyed first thing in the morning, another bad habit, I'll wake up and reach for the phone and I might post something on Facebook and get it wrong because of autocorrect or generally being a bit of a klutz first thing in the morning. And then I can't correct it. It won't let me edit on the phone. I have to leap out of bed, switch on the computer and edit it quickly. Especially if it's something really stupid that might annoy somebody.
I think that's allowed first thing in the morning. I think it's acceptable.
Yeah. So back to the routine. Basically, Jason, I don't have a really good routine, but what I try to do if I'm in a panic to get my word count up is just write all the hours God sends. So I'll get up, have breakfast, write, do anything that I really, really need to do for myself and my family, and then write until bedtime. then fall asleep exhausted, possibly with a Kindle in my hand.
Hopefully not landing on your face.
It has happened. But I think a Kindle's a really, really good thing. Do you read mainly paperbacks, or do you read?
I read mainly on Kindle just for ease of access. But I've got my phone here that I'm looking at the questions on, so I can see who sent the questions. Because on BeLive we tend to just get Facebook user. So I read on my Kindle, read on my on the Kindle app on my phone, read on the Kindle Cloud Reader on the laptop. Can't find my actual Kindle. Anyone who knows me knows it needs some sort of contraption on it that flashes or whistles or something every time I lose it. Terrible.
Yeah, I must admit, I lost mine once, and I think it was in a black cover, and I'd left it on a black arm of a black chair. So it just blended in, and I had no idea it was there. It was lost for about a week. Terrible.
I'm sure mine's probably in the bookshelf somewhere. As I'm saying that, oh no, I thought I'd just found it, but I've not. Never mind.
Yeah, you probably.
I got really excited then, but what I've just spotted is from from Kenilworth Books from Tamsin.
Oh,
Little message when she sent me. You can't see the message, but this was from the Lee Child and Heather Martin biography. So there's a really lovely message on the back. But yeah, have a look at Tamsin at Kenilworth Books, everyone. She's gorgeous. But I thought I found my Kindle, but that was even nicer, a nice personal message that she sent me. Barbara Copperthwaite. Hi, Barbara. Hi, Helen. If you could go back in time 5 years, what advice would you give yourself about your writing career? That's an excellent question.
that is a really, really good question.
I'm stealing it, Barbara. Sorry.
I think the advice I'd give myself is stick with it, girl. You'll get better and better.
Do you have a favourite book that you've written, or a favourite? I always like to ask about relationships between characters. Do you have a favourite one? Not necessarily a romantic one, just any kind of relationship.
My favourite book is Bright Lights. It's funny that you asked. Maybe it's something to do with books with blue covers. Now I'm looking around to see if I can find the vodka trail again, and I found it. So I'll just flash that up at the camera. Oh, blue book. The Vodka Trail was the book that I found the easiest to read. The easiest to write.
I know what you meant.
Yeah, somehow it just almost wrote itself, which is spooky because it's never happened with any other book. And up until Bright Lights, I just said that was my favourite book, really, just because it was so easy to write. It was just such a breeze. And I felt that in the book, Marty and Kat kind of learnt to appreciate each other. They still didn't like each other, but at least they realised that sometimes they had to rely on each other because they end up in a situation where they have to work together or they're not going to survive. So obviously they do work together and they kind of learn to appreciate each other more. And he possibly gets more of a feel of what she carries from her past that makes it difficult for her to settle to anything today. As I say, Kat starts the Trail series as a bit of a flaky character, but she does ultimately come good, and I think people warm to her. Maybe even Marty warms to her. But my favourite book now is Bright Lights, my latest one, and it's my favourite book just because I think it is the best one that I've written. I know not everybody agrees. Some of the people who've reviewed it say that they prefer the Trail series, but a lot of people do say that they think it's a step change and it is the best thing that I've done, and I would tend to agree that it is.
Well, I'm talking to you and I'm thinking I want to go and finish the book, so I can agree that it's really good. Really good. Really been enjoying it. Go on, Patricia Bolton, who writes as Tony Bolton, says, Helen, what inspired you to write this novel, which is so different from your other thrillers, which touches exactly on what you were just starting to talk about?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The reason that I wrote it is because I've wanted to write it for a long time. The idea originally came about in a dream, and it was a dream decades and decades ago, at a time when I was only writing short stories. I wouldn't have had the skills to write a novel at that time, but obviously now that I've written 8, I've proved that I do have the skills to write one. So I guess I just waited until I was ready. I would have liked to have written it before, but I immersed myself in the Trail series, and once you're writing a series, I feel that you need to concentrate on that and finish it before you do anything else. I'm not as productive as some writers. I know there are some writers taking part in the chat, like Valerie, who writes several books a year, and I wish that I could, and I must learn to, but it's a skill that has eluded me so far. So I write 1 book a year, and that meant that it took me 5 years to do the Trail series, and it was only when that was finished that I thought, okay, I'm going to write the book that I've wanted to write for years. And that was Bright Lies.
Did it turn out differently than you thought it would when you started? Did it change once you actually got going?
Changed a lot. And part of the reason why it changed was because I used a lot of beta readers. I should have said that my books are good because I have a lot of help to make them good. If only I could just write the perfect first draft and it was brilliant, and it would be published to lots and lots of celebration and acclaim. That doesn't happen. I write a draft that's as good as I can get it, but it really isn't all that great. And then 20 or 30 beta readers look at it. Some of them are specialists, and some of them are just people that like to read, and other writers. My brother, I'm really, really keen to get a wide cross section of beta readers. One of them actually was Dawn Patricia Bolton, who's commented in the chat. And thank you very much, Dawn, for your help, because I did take your feedback on board, and I took on board the feedback from the other beta readers, and it improved the book a lot. And then it was edited by a lady called Catherine D'Souza, and she improved it a lot as well. So it is good, but I can't claim all of the credit for that because I had so much help with it.
When you get your feedback, do you change everything that people say, or is it a case of if a lot of people mention the same point that you'll look at that harder than you would one person mentioning something?
Oh, definitely. Generally, what I find is that about half the feedback that comes back is common to everybody. So at this time, there were things that pretty much everybody said. So I had to make those changes. There was never any doubt about it. I would always make those changes. And then there was other feedback that was harder to deal with, but I still made it because even though maybe not very many people had said it, it might just be one person, I really thought it would be a good idea. I mean, some of my beta readers were abuse survivors. Some of my beta readers were ex-policemen who had dealt with abuse victims and offenders. Some of my beta readers had, like you, Samantha, done child safeguarding as part of their teacher training. So they had a lot of knowledge of how abusers might operate, and I took account of what they said. And I think the book has changed a lot as a result of that. It also changed a lot in one particular regard that I don't like to talk about much because it's a spoiler, but the ending, certainly as it relates to David and Jack, is very different from what it originally was. And I was persuaded by my beta readers to make that change. They didn't all, about half of them did, and one in particular was very, very persuasive. And you know, they said if you really want the bad guy to suffer, then there's one particular thing that you have to do. I'm really, really sorry. I can't say more than that.
No, please don't. I hate spoilers. But yeah, I'll message you tomorrow with the response to that. I'm intrigued. Elizabeth Hill, hi Elizabeth, says, Helen, what was the hardest part to write?
The absolute hardest part was when David, the evil stepfather, appears to succeed in what he's doing. That was really, really hard to write. I didn't like to write it, but I knew that I had to write it. And I tried to do it in a way that wasn't graphic, so you knew what had happened, but you didn't actually see him do it, because I just think that would be too gross.
Yeah, I quite like when things are kind of left for you to fill in the blanks, when enough is said that the graphic nature of that kind of scene doesn't need to be on the page.
I wanted it to be believable, but I didn't feel that I had to go into the most sordid details in it. But I wanted readers to know what David was, what he was doing. I wanted them at least to recognise what he was doing and how he did it. And if even one person reads it and thinks, well, actually, I'm a bit suspicious of a certain situation, I'm going to inquire into it, I think the book would have done a good job.
I agree. I think the level of research you must have done just shows how it just shows in the writing. It shows in how the book makes you feel at different intervals. So there might be things where you feel like things are really quite happy and it's a really quite nice relationship, and then all of a sudden these things just kind of creep in and you start to feel your skin crawl, and that kind of writing must be so hard to get to that point.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, I feel that ultimately the book offers more than just a creep show. It is,
God, yeah.
But ultimately, I think that you end the book with hope for the future. I certainly hope so, anyway. And again, I can't say too much about that, but
no, I know,
I wanted it to have a nice message at the end, rather than just be about an evil person doing evil things. Yes, he does, and not everybody in the book is nice, but the message that I wanted to get across was that many people are nice and many people are helpful, and they will work together. They will work.
I like that. I like that it's not going to be a book that's just going to end on something sad, that it's going to be hopeful and there's other aspects as well.
Yes. I can't pretend that Emily isn't affected by what happens to her. Of course she is.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't be? And I can't pretend that Jack isn't affected by his past. Of course he is too. How could he possibly avoid that? But both end up with a degree of self-awareness which enables them to overcome their past.
We've got a comment from Joe Ulla. Hi, Joe. I don't think it's Ulla, I think it's Ula. Sorry, Joe. We did have a discussion about this at the time when we were having the author chat. I'm terrible at, I can't say different things. I can't roll my R's and I can't say things. Valerie wants to know how long it takes you to write a novel. So you said that you write one a year. How much of that time is actually spent writing?
A lot of it is spent rewriting. So if I never ever went off and got an accountancy contract, I could possibly stretch to 2 books a year, but the process from start to finish would be about 6 months. So I probably spend as much time doing rewrites as I do actually writing the book itself. I spend a lot of time plotting. I won't.
How much of it is done plotted out before you start?
It's all plotted out.
Wow.
And I keep the character Bible as well. So for each of the important characters, not everybody. So, for example, Emily has got friends, and I don't keep a character Bible for them. I just keep very brief details of who they are and what they're like and what their situation is. But for the half a dozen or so people who we spend quite a bit of time with in the book, I would have a character Bible, and it would be about 2 pages, and it would basically explain what that person's background is, what their philosophy and outlook on life is, and what makes them tick.
Pauline Render Byron says, good evening to us both. What's the best part of writing a novel?
Well, I've got a printed copy in my hands. I should at this point flash it in front of the screen again.
Absolutely.
That just feels so good. So unboxing the first draft copies, even though it turned out they did have typos in them, like the first print run always does have. Not major ones, but unfortunately there were a few.
Jason has asked Caroline's favourite question, which is, would you like to turn any of your books into a graphic novel?
Not this one. I just can't imagine how they'd work out as a graphic novel. It might be quite a fun thing to do, but it would probably be, in most cases, quite rude, because although Bright Lies doesn't have any graphic sex in it, some of my other books have a bit more, and I'm not sure how that would translate to a graphic novel. I think you'd possibly have to have the curtain come down at one point.
Kaz would be better to advise you on that. I don't know. I'm now wondering what the subjects that Kaz reads about are. I'll have to ask her. Valerie Kia wants to know, is there any genre you wouldn't write?
Yes, probably sci-fi, because I'm sorry, Valerie, I know you're a sci-fi fan. And if I was any good at writing sci-fi, I would write it, but I can't imagine ever being able to come up with a completely different world and worldview. So sci-fi, dystopia and fantasy are genres that I just couldn't write, because I wouldn't be able to come up with something believable. I think all my books are kind of grounded in reality. I tend to write about what I know or what I can imagine. But it's a good question. And hi, Valerie, and also hi to Jo Uller and Elizabeth Hill, because Jo and Elizabeth were also beta readers, and I'm very grateful to you for helping me out. And I'm very grateful to Valerie also for being such a great supporter of psychological thriller writers. So,
she really is. We're very, very lucky actually in the group. Just so much support there for readers and for authors. It's a wonderful place. I love our group.
Yeah, it is a nice group, and I've discovered some really nice books as a result of being in the group. Valerie's books, for example, are absolutely wonderful. I got totally hooked on her Dublin Mysteries. One bit earlier this year, I had a Kindle Unlimited subscription. I kind of got it by accident because I had a spare Kindle and I lent it to my mum, and she subscribed for Kindle Unlimited. But that was no hardship. I just read loads of books, like Valerie's, that are in KU. Mine are in Kindle Unlimited as well, as it happens.
Little plug there. I like it.
So has to be done.
It has to be done. When you're in a live interview, I think it's perfectly acceptable. Pauline Render Byron has asked, is there a book you loved so much you wish you had written it? That's a good question, Pauline.
Pauline, that's a wonderful question. Oh God, Pauline, so many books. So many. Too many to name. All of Valerie's books. I wish I was Valerie and I'd written her books. Definitely.
We've got so many. We've only got 5 minutes left, and we have got so many questions. So Jackie McLean says, hi, so glad to join you. Hi, Jackie.
Hi, Jackie.
Oh, okay. Leslie Lloyd says, maybe do a couple of chapters and put it on UKCBC and ask for opinions. The narrator can make or break an audiobook. So obviously that's what we were chatting about earlier, that you'd like to record your own audio. So Leslie's suggesting record a couple of chapters and see what the feedback is.
Okay, thanks, Leslie. That's a good call.
I will quite happily give you admin permission for that right now, if you would like to do that.
Okay, I may not do it really, really quickly, but I will definitely do it. And
I think it's a great idea, actually.
I think I need to practice a Bristol accent a bit, or at least a Somerset accent, because that's the way that Emily speaks, and I would like to speak with her voice.
I will say to any other authors watching, please request admin consent if you would like to do the same. We can't have 5,000 audiobooks suddenly appear.
Yeah, UK CVC is just so good. I mean, not just cover advice, but audiobook advice. Thanks very much, and thanks very much, Leslie, for reading Bright Lies and reviewing it. I'm very grateful to you.
Wendy H. Jones says, hi there, loving this. Kaz says, love that you keep a spreadsheet of jobs. I'm a teacher and Sam works at a school. Wonder how we'd rate ours. I've had a lot of jobs, so maybe that's we'll go there another day, Kaz. Behave.
Being a writer is definitely the best job. You know, I am the best boss that I've ever had. And, you know, the Christmas party, the works Christmas party I'm going to have, that's going to be a scream, I tell you. me with an espresso martini.
We'll have to have a Be Live off-screen party. Nobody wants to see me drunk. What do you like to read when you're not writing? That's from Wendy H. Jones.
What do I like to read? All sorts. Actually, Wendy H. Jones, I really like your books, and so did my mum. We were both into reading your books together and comparing notes. I do like a nice thriller. I also read a bit of fantasy from time to time, and probably my favourite writer ever is the Canadian Guy Gavriel Kay. And I've got no idea if I've pronounced his name properly at all, but I feel that he really gets inside a character's head, and you really feel emotionally invested in his characters. I admire that about his work. It's what I hope to achieve with mine. Readers will be the judge of that. But my goodness, there are so many good books out there, and UK CBC is such a great place to find them.
It is, but I need to be less skint from books. It's my biggest outgoing, and actually I'm not complaining about that at all. Had the best year reading all the recommendations.
There is that. I think Kindle Unlimited is quite good.
Yeah, I have that.
If you can make sure that you take advantage of the subscription. And I find sometimes I read like loads, I'll binge read and I'll read a book every 2 days. And then other times I'm just so busy that weeks go by and I don't finish one. As I said, I usually take a Kindle up at bedtime and I do fall asleep with the Kindle just on top of me. I think my husband comes up to bed later. He's a late night video gamer, so he'll sort of creep into the bedroom. I think he just carefully removes the Kindle and puts it aside.
You are definitely not the first person that's told me that. I've dropped phones and Kindles on my face and books. Plenty of books over the years.
Yeah, I've done that. I've woken up with the light still on and found a book on my face. Yeah,
I don't know that I've done that, but it wouldn't surprise me.
But it's just so good. It's one of life's greatest pleasures, I think. I'm just so absolutely thrilled that I learnt to read at the age of 5. If she was here today, I'd be thanking my primary school teacher. And presumably you're doing that because you're a primary school teacher, aren't you, Sam? So
teaching assistant, but yeah. At the moment, we're doing a lot of. I've been buying books for the children in the class who are reluctant readers, and I've got them to all write their wish list of books as well. So bit by bit, I'm feeding that into the class library. But yeah, we have some reluctant readers, so we've had chats with them, and specific things have been ordered. I sit there on Google, and my husband's like, "You're on Amazon again, aren't you?" I'm like, maybe. but I will find something to encourage even the most reluctant of readers. That's my mission.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, I still remember the joy of actually realizing I could read as a little kid. That was just so brilliant.
It is the best thing. We have got, well, we've run out of time now, so I'm just going to quickly say hello to Nell Dixon, Jim Napier. They're the only people that we've missed from the feed. We've got through so many questions, and I've not even touched most of mine. So thank you so much. We've had such a lovely hour. It's disappeared.
It's been fab. Thank you. And thanks to everybody who's turned up and asked questions and said hello. Hello again. It's been so lovely to have this chat about books, and so nice to be part of UKCBC.
I know, it's my favourite place. Thank you so much.